Have you ever wondered why some people build wealth effortlessly while others stay stuck year after year? Well, China is an example of a country of people who went from extreme famine and poverty to a hyper-modern society with a sprawling network of 33,000 bullet trains in the span of a few decades. There's a lesson to be learned here. It's entirely possible to break out of a hopeless downward spiral if you adopt the right strategy. In case it wasn't clear, I was manufactured in China. And while I've had to reprogram a large part of myself to fit into America, there's no denying that my Chinese mindset is what enabled me to earn $1 million in 10 years. Today, I want to share some of the key Chinese mindsets that anyone can use to build wealth with. And at the end of the video, I'm also going to share some of the major downsides of being too Chinese. You can't be too good because everything in life has a trade-off. You can't have the good without some of the bad. Let's get into it. Rapid adaptability. A 2020 McKinsey study found that people who are rapid adopters of new technologies and market shifts generate 2 to 3 times more returns than people who resist change. In China, this adaptability is a way of life. Back in the 1990s, almost nobody owned cars. Armies of bicycles clogged the city streets. By the 2000s, people were only just starting to buy and sell real estate. Real estate was not a thing before. But 10 years later, by the 2010s, China had the largest automotive industry and the largest real estate market in the world. Today, my 80-year-old grandma in China uses her smartphone to order taxis on Didi, getting food delivered by Meituan, and checking in for her medical appointments with just a few taps of her fingers. Perhaps this isn't all that mind-blowing, but keep in mind, she is 80 years old, and she never even learned how to operate a desktop computer before the smartphone era dawned on her. My dad was the same. He never heard of Bitcoin until I mentioned it to him in passing in 2017. By 2018, he learned to set up a whole Bitcoin mining operation in his garage just by watching YouTube videos, diving headfirst into a technology he knows very little about just to see if he can make some money from it. I followed that spirit. I left home in my 20s to chase opportunities in Silicon Valley, which was way outside of my comfort zone. But I did it anyway because I wanted to be where the change was happening. If you want to build wealth, embrace change like how the Chinese do it. One of the biggest changes in the past few years has been the evolution of these AI technologies. You should use AI every day. Find its strengths, find its weaknesses, find the opportunity for profit before it passes us by. Collective mindset. You've probably seen it. A group of Chinese people playfully fighting over who gets to pay the bill at a restaurant. Americans are accustomed to every person paying for their own portion, but Chinese people eat like a family, and they pay like a family. It's not just cultural tradition, it comes from this deep-rooted belief that sharing resources strengthens the group. My parents didn't cut me loose when I turned 18. They supported me well into my 20s, and they would have kept supporting me well into my 30s and 40s had I not made my own money. They're not doing this out of an expectation to get paid back later with interest. They are doing this out of love. When one of us succeeds, all of us succeed. And let's not forget, Chinese people love money and are well known for being cheap and a little selfish. But when you put us in a cultural situation like who's paying for the table, we'll fight to pay. Paying for the table isn't about showing off who's more successful. It is a way of saying, times are tough, but we'll get through this together, and I will make sure everyone gets fed. It doesn't mean everybody at this table will get rich, but it creates the emotional resilience needed to start building wealth. It's hard for anyone to build wealth if we're hungry. If you want to start building wealth, take your community and your food as seriously as the Chinese do. If I invite Chinese people to dinner, I'm obviously paying. I don't even think about it. It's an accepted cost of what it takes to build a trusted network. And the interconnected strength fuels all of our abilities to build wealth in the long run. Masters of arbitrage. Chinese people have a knack for finding deals. At the surface level, this looks like haggling, all these emotional manipulation strategies to bid the price down. But what it really comes down to is this understanding of the concept of arbitrage. Arbitrage is the concept of taking advantage of price differences between different markets where they exist. Good deals can always be found if you know where to look. In the 1980s, foreigners started doing business in China. My parents witnessed firsthand how these Westerners come in with their dollars, and for every dollar they have, they can get up to 5 times the value, 5 times the food, 5 times everything. And it's not like they're working any harder than a Chinese person. They simply get paid in dollars. It felt deeply unfair, and it was a large part of the reason why my parents chose to move abroad, so they can experience some of that conversion rate for themselves. For decades, made in China dominated the global markets because of arbitrage. Even if you don't think about it, you still benefit from the cheap goods. When you buy things from places like Walmart or Costco, these businesses can sell their goods at a cheap price and still make a huge margin off of it. It's an accepted fact of life that the entire world exploits Chinese labor to make money. If you want to build wealth, you have to internalize the unfairness the way the Chinese do. The world is not fair. Good deals never come to you. You have to seek them out the way my parents did when they moved out of China, leaving everything they knew behind. For those who remained in China, they exploited themselves until they made China into a manufacturing superpower. It turns out there is a deal to be found when the entire world wants to use your cheap labor to make their cheap goods. You become so good at making cheap things that you end up making all the things, creating wealth for your country and putting America in perpetual debt. High tolerance for hardship. A 2018 study from Stanford University found that individuals who embrace challenges and delay gratification are more likely to achieve financial stability and career advancement than those driven by short-term rewards. In China, this is encapsulated in a common Mandarin phrase called 吃苦. It means eat bitterness. Endure hardship now for a greater payoff in the future. This shows up in the relentless work ethic and discipline with money, like the Chinese factory workers clocking in 12-hour shifts and families saving up to 40% of their hard-earned income. It's not about chasing passion. It's a quiet obligation to secure the future. My grandma likes to tell me, I have never tasted a single day of bitter in my life. And that's probably true, which is why whenever I find myself working 12-hour days, I just tell myself, I'm tasting a little bitter. And that's okay, because I am Chinese. People like us eat bitter, and we savor it. This is the exact opposite of what a therapist will tell you to do. But for what it's worth, I eat bitterness. If you want to accumulate wealth, there is always going to be tough moments without fanfare. And by eating bitter now, whether that's retraining yourself to use all this AI stuff or cutting down on your daily expenses, you lay the foundation for a wealthier future. Deference to authority. Flipping the script here. I want to talk about Chinese mindsets that might work against you and your wealth. In China, there's this ingrained respect and deference towards authority and elders. Take my generation, for example. Pretty much every Chinese person you meet of my age will have some version of the same story from their parents or their grandparents. And the story goes, things used to be hard, but by doing what I am told to do, things got better. And what exactly did the government tell them to do? It was largely some version of adapting to change. Go back to point number 1. Because adapting to change is what it took to finish a communist revolution. We got real lucky that our dictator's commands led us out of starvation and lifted China into the world's second largest economy. But it would be foolish to conclude that our dictator is always right. If you want to keep the wealth that you built, don't be like my grandma and get confused where that wealth came from. It was not because of our benevolent dictator. That was a coincidence. It was because of the Chinese people's capacity for change. Don't trust the system. Growing up Chinese often means internalizing deep skepticism toward government. My parents never trusted pensions or social safety nets because they've seen these promises collapse overnight. This distrust pushes people into becoming more conservative, more self-reliant, constantly hoarding and saving, buying real estate, and even being unethically selfish just to feel secure. But a society without trust is a dystopian nightmare. Being paranoid is not a sign of strength. It's a mental health problem. We need to build the world we want to live in. And some of the greatest wealth makers of our generation built their wealth by embracing the open internet and providing value to all these other people that they've never met before. If you want to start building wealth, be less Chinese and transcend that selfish preservation instinct to find ways to connect with other people and earn their trust. Money equals pride and pressure. In modern China, money has evolved into a symbol of our resilience. Being poor doesn't just mean less comfort. It could mean shame. It could mean you didn't work as hard as the rest of us, and Asian tiger moms would eat you alive. This intense pressure is what fuels us to succeed at all costs. But the same pressure can become very toxic. It can lead to a lifetime of mental health challenges, feeling like you're not enough. Wealth that comes at the cost of your well-being is not true wealth. If you want to build real wealth, don't be too Chinese and let go of the idea that money defines your worth and your happiness. Use money as a tool to do the things that you want. Success doesn't mean having more money than everybody else. Success means knowing what you want and having enough money to live comfortably and still do what you want. Every culture has its pros and cons, and I benefited greatly from my Chinese ways. But these days, I spend just as much time trying to shake off some of the more toxic traits. My path to wealth is about finding the right balance. If any of this resonated with you and your life, drop a comment below. I'd also love to hear how your culture has shaped your view of wealth. And that is all I have for today. I think it's time for a walkie walk. Toshi, it's time for a walkie walk. Well, not like that. Walkie walk. Wow.